Hello and greetings from California. I'm Cassie Fowler, the Chief Impact Officer at Pledgeling, and I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude for the opportunity to be here today with all of you in celebration of our new partnership with Education Cannot Wait, to empower individuals just like you around the world to donate directly through this virtual event in support of their mission, and to help advance the future of learning for the world's most vulnerable children and youth. In these unprecedented times, we believe in taking bold action to turn challenges into opportunities of impact. This virtual side event of the 75th session of the UN General Assembly demonstrates the power we each hold to unlock new resources through all types of virtual events and inspire each other to support the world's most pressing causes. We have an opportunity now to create the future that we believe in, which is why at Pledgeling, we provide the tools for audiences just like this to donate in the moment when you feel inspired to take action. You can trust that every dollar, peso, euro, pound, and more will make a real impact in the lives of children through the programs of Education Cannot Wait. Thank you all so much for being a part of the Pledge to Do Good and for embracing this moment to stand together for education. Your donations will have world-changing impact on generations for children everywhere.
So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Gordon Brown. I'm here to start this extraordinary session focusing on Education Cannot Wait at the 75th anniversary meeting of the United Nations. And we meet today and are talking online, having heard some of the most powerful, poignant, persuasive speeches from refugees themselves in the last few minutes. And I want to say that we are facing an economic and a health crisis, which has now become an education crisis. And the people who are hardest hit are the 13 million refugees, the 40 million displaced children, the 75 million children in conflict zones. And we know from the reports that we've just heard that despite all our efforts, and I want to thank everybody who has contributed to Education Cannot Wait, despite all our efforts, the situation is still getting worse and not better, and we have to do more. Since its inception a few years ago, Education Cannot Wait has created several million places for young people to have education when they're either displaced or in refugee situations. But Education Cannot Wait has also been the catalyst for other organizations to come together and to do more. And we've been a coordinator for people in a multilateral, multi-agency, multi-dimensional, multi-year programs that have been developed in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, and in Latin America and elsewhere. And I want to thank everybody who has contributed, but I think you know from what we've heard already from these stories from refugees that we will need $300 million more if we are going to be able to provide the service that are needed. You're going to hear some statements from some of the great world leaders who I want to praise for championing the cause of refugees and displaced people. But I want to end where this broadcast began, with focus on one situation that we all face today. 2 years ago, when I spoke at Education Cannot Wait, I highlighted the tragic situation of 3 young teenagers who couldn't get education or any resources at the Moria camp in Greece. Young people who were driven to try suicide themselves. Losing hope, desolate, they tried to take their own lives. And I appealed for more funds to help the refugees there and in the other camps nearby. A few weeks ago, while I was trying with others to get money into this camp for help with education, we had one of the worst fires we have seen. Today, we are seeing hundreds of people moving from that area into other camps in the area, but worried about their future. If anything should persuade us that we need to do more, it is seeing these young children particularly forcibly on the move, having to find a new camp for themselves, but still in need of the education and the help and the support that we haven't been able to give so far. So my plea today is to think of every child who is now without hope and who is desolated, and to say that the purpose of education is to give hope so that young people can prepare and plan for the future, so that they can dream again, so that they can believe again that something can change in their lives to make their lives worthwhile for the future. This is our mission at Education Cannot Wait. This is our task to help millions of refugees and displaced people have a better future. This is what I know everybody wants to contribute in this very special week for the United Nations. And while we're online and cannot meet, I know that everybody will share the same aim. Let us build a better future for this generation of young people. Let them have the education they need. They are more talented and with more potential than the underfunded education systems we're providing them with at the moment. Let's make sure that we can see the talent of a new generation realized and fulfilled. Thank you very much.
When an emergency occurs, a child's education is the first to be disrupted, but often the last to be resumed. 75 million conflict and crisis-affected children are in urgent need of an education, with numbers rising due to COVID-19. Schools protect children from violence, child marriage, recruitment by armed groups, and help them fulfill their true potential. Education Cannot Wait is trying to reach these kids before they fall further behind.
Education Cannot Wait helps these vulnerable kids around the world who just want to learn, because there is no peace, no relief, no moving forward without the life-saving power of education.
In 2019 alone, Education Cannot Wait provided education programs to 2.6 million vulnerable children in the Sahel, Venezuela, Mozambique, and more. It distributed $131 million across 29 countries struck by emergencies to train and support teachers, build classrooms, launch early learning programs, and provide quality learning materials. As a result, 25% more kids in some crisis settings accessed school, and more girls are learning in countries like Afghanistan. Every ECW-supported program improved school transition, completion, or survival by crisis-affected youth. In 2020, ECW responded with decisive speed to a unique global crisis to deliver quality education during a pandemic, providing $60 million to more than 30 countries in just 6 months. Education Cannot Wait has raised more than $600 million to date from government and private sector leaders so far. It needs to raise an additional $300 million in the coming year. Partners can play a crucial role in helping ECW expand its innovation, impact, and ensuring no child is left behind. From solar-powered tablets to learning through play, from well-being to wellness, and its goal of reaching 60% girls across all of its investments, ECW aims high. We will leave no child without the chance to demonstrate their potential, including children with disabilities, like 8-year-old Khalid, who was displaced by conflict in Afghanistan. Because if we make education solutions work for those furthest behind, we can educate the world and unlock the promise of every child. They will help us transform the world and provide hope to generations to come. The future of education is here. Join us.
So, good morning, good afternoon. Let me first thank oh, am I there? No technical glitches, okay. Let me first thank the Right Honorable Gordon Brown for his opening statement, and more so for being providing the leadership years ago, coming up with an idea of speeding up the future and making the future more present and bringing hope to children, which is very much the title of this event today. The future of education is here. And that is also a reflection of what the UN Secretary General stated in his brief on education in August. The future of education is here. What does it mean? It means that those dreams and those hopes that we have for the future, in order to materialize them, we have to think of them as they were already here in the present moment, here and now. And that is precisely what the chair of the high-level steering group and the UN Special Envoy for Global Education, Gordon Brown, did a few years ago. Today, ECW is here. We exist, and we exist together with all of you. However, education is still not here for the large part of children and youth affected by conflict and crisis and forced displacement. So for us, we want to make the future of education to become a reality for all the 75 million plus, including the 39 million girls who are out there today and who are doubly affected by COVID-19. We decide when the future will become reality, and it's all our own mindsets, and when we decide to make it a reality. And we are hoping that this event today will spur us all to continuously translate that dream and that hope into reality and action. So thank you very much again, the chair of the high-level steering group and you and Special Envoy for Global Education for taking the big leap forward and for inspiring us and encouraging us to move onto that path through this event and in the times ahead. We'd also like to thank, of course, Global Citizen, a dear partner of ours, and Rachel Brosnahan and Will Smith for the great video and offers of support, not only today, but often also leading up to many big events, but also in your engagement out there with all our partners to rally support for this collective commitment of ours. Now, patience is usually seen as a virtue. But when it comes to education for children suffering left furthest behind, it's anything but a virtue. It's actually something we should not aspire to be achieved. We don't want to be patient in crisis to deliver on SDG 4. We cannot afford to be patient. We have to move with speed. And this is what this event also is here to inspire. It's time to scale up. It's time to move forward with a continuous implementation of the different modalities that is making this possible. The new way of working, bringing the humanitarian development nexus together, and also to focus on the localization agenda, grand bargain. And these are the peculiars of the design of Education Cannot Wait that has allowed us to reach 4.5 million children as of this date, September 2020. But before we go into that and all the different themes and our partners breaking down how we can do things better and how we can build what we have achieved so far, let me start by thanking our co-hosts who made this possible and who came forward and offered to be part of co-hosting this event, who are also strong members of Education Cannot Wait. I would like to thank the United Kingdom, Germany, Norway, Canada, the United States, and Colombia, and our partners, the Ministry of Education in Somalia, Ethiopia, and Burkina Faso, for rallying behind this event and also for taking the lead in making it happen. I will hand over to all of you now to do the talking. I want to just remind everyone, when we prepared for this event, we had two choices. One is to make a very small panel and only invite 10 stakeholders and partners, and then they could speak for a much longer time, or to try to be as inclusive as we possibly could be, and then allow all the smart, brilliant minds, action-oriented partners of ours to speak, even though the quantity doesn't matter, the quality of what they say matters. So it will be less time allocated, but there will be more depth in what is being said, and it will be said with speed. So we can keep to the time allocations to allow everyone and everyone's voice to be out there. And I can say we have over 2,000 registrations. So there's a huge audience here on the internet and on Twitter and YouTube and other channels. So quickly, before I hand over to the first speaker, We will discuss coordination, coordinated investments, complementarity, and cooperation, because it's all about how we complement, cooperate. No one can do it alone. No agency, no fund, no government can do it alone. And certainly not the ministers of education who are left to fend for their children and youth on the territories of their country during very complex and difficult circumstances. So coordination and complementarity and cooperation is the number one. Second, learning to learn, to make sure that we deliver quality education, an education that is relevant. It's how we teach and what is important to learn today in the 21st century, but also for a child or a young person that has grown up in a country of violence, that has grown up being uprooted from their homes and fleeing their country. There are special needs. There needs to be a holistic approach and to look at all the needs and the potential that they have because of what they have gone through. So with that, I will conclude. And I am very honored to hand over and invite our very first speaker. I am very delighted to do so, because I'm now to introduce a very powerful woman leader and a staunch supporter of Education Cannot Wait, whose leadership for girls' education is an inspiration to all of us. She truly spurs us in our work. Baroness Sugg, who is the Prime Minister Johnson has appointed as the United Kingdom's Special Envoy for Girls' Education, as well as Minister of Foreign Affairs and Development, at the very pivotal moment in our history and at the state of the world. Next year, the UK will host the G7, as well as the COP26 climate conference. We know from our work how important climate change is. We know from our work the importance of political leadership, not the least from girls. And we know that G7 has previously championed global education very strongly for those left furthest behind. So, Minister Sugg, the floor is yours. Please speak to us about strategic coordination investments, about political leadership, and how we can successfully reach those left furthest behind in crisis. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Yasmin. And it's really great to join all of you to discuss today such a vital topic, where so much urgent action is needed. And we faced a global crisis in education before COVID-19, with children living in conflict and crisis affected countries, the worst affected. And today the stakes are far, far higher. And where conflicts rage, access to education is not just crucial for the future of each individual child, but for reintegration, for economic development, and for building that sustainable peace we all want to see. And we're really grateful to Education Cannot Wait, who work in the world's most challenging environments. And thank you for everything you do to spread hope and spread education and opportunity. Now, every single country around the world is under huge economic pressure at the moment as a result of COVID-19, but that is not a reason for inaction on education. And investing in education in communities ravaged by conflicts and crisis is even more important if we're to build back better from COVID-19. And now's really our opportunity to reset education, to make it more inclusive and to support children. We've seen the share of global humanitarian funding go up a bit, thanks to governments who have pledged to support Education Cannot Wait. And by investing in Education Cannot Wait, we're pooling our resources to support fast and coordinated education responses. But the sad fact remains that global humanitarian appeals for education remain significantly underfunded by over 50%. And that matters because communities in crisis rank education for their children as their top priority. So we need agencies involved in humanitarian aid to listen to the beneficiaries. And the message to all donors working in global education is really to join together to bring our resources and bring our efforts together. The UK is incredibly proud to be the biggest donor to Education Cannot Wait. But the funding shortfall is so large and the need is so great, I would be delighted to see us be overtaken by other donors. We know political leadership's really important as financial investment. As leaders, we must make sure the commitments made in meeting rooms, in virtual meeting rooms, are realised in the classrooms. And as we've heard today, child refugees face particular peril and hardship. And Education Cannot Wait needs more funding. But let me end on a high note. A few months ago, the UK agreed to provide a further £5 million to fund the salaries of over 5,000 teachers in refugee camps in 10 countries as part of our COVID-19 response. And this week, I heard that a boy from Ariba Camp High School in Chad had gained some of the best grades in the entire country and will be going on to university. And so that funding that we're providing, that you're all providing to Education Cannot Wait, will really ensure that many other children have that opportunity to shine. And with commitment from political leaders, with partners like Education Cannot Wait, we really can build a global coalition that gives every child the education that they want and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baroness Ag. And again, on behalf of all Education Cannot Wait stakeholders, thank you for your leadership and support. And we feel it every day. Thank you so much. Thank you, and for the generous financial investments that the UK has made in Education Cannot Wait. We will now continue, and we will take a trip back to the countries where ministers of education are struggling with COVID-19 and the crisis dimensions that they were already in before COVID-19 to deliver on SDG 4 to their own children and youth, and also to the refugees whom they are hosting. And they are doing so generously and with a great sense of solidarity. It is my pleasure to introduce the Minister of Education and Literacy of Burkina Faso, His Excellency Mr. Stanislaw Waro, His Excellency Dr. Mekuria Getahun Mekuria, Minister of Education in Ethiopia, and His Excellency Abdullahi Godahebari, Minister of Education of Culture and Higher Education in Somalia. They will speak to us now. It's pre-recorded for technical reasons, but they are with us in spirit, and they have thoughtfully prepared themselves for this. And they are here with us right now, and they will speak. Over to our ministers, please.
We have the lowest enrollment rate in sub-Saharan Africa. We have about 32% of our students, children going to schools, while about 68% are staying out of schools. We try to focus on the most vulnerable communities of our society. We have a very significant and very helpful partnership around the world, including ECW, which we found very instrumental in this front, and we are committed to reform and help and boost the education system of the country, particularly education in emergencies. I do thank you.
Ethiopia hosts one of the largest refugee populations in Africa. As a result of natural disasters, hazards and conflict, adolescents and their families living in refugee camps have experienced critical household poverty, with many reporting food insecurity and inability to afford rent. This has further been compounded by the impact of COVID-19. I wish to present my heartfelt appreciation for the support that Education Cannot Wait has been providing us since 2017 in enhancing quality and inclusive educational opportunities for refugee children, host communities, and IDP children in Ethiopia. The government of Ethiopia developed a distance learning plan and distance education guideline. This has helped children to learn remotely through TV, radio, and digital platforms. The Ministry of Education and 10 regional education bureaus have provided lessons through this platform to an estimated 5.1 million primary and secondary school children. However, challenges still exist around children not having adequate technology, internet connectivity, and electricity. As a result, the Ethiopian Ministry of Education has taken upon itself the provision of digital technology to Ethiopian secondary school students in its first phase of digital deployment, and middle and primary schools in its second phase of digital technology deployment. We have seen that COVID-19 has widened the digital divide between the poor and the rich, between the urban and the rural. And so I continue to encourage ECW to tune its support towards deployment of digital technologies to the less advantaged, to the vulnerable, to the poor economically, but if given chance, the intelligent children out of schools, in refugee camps, in host communities. Let's not allow the digital divide to go even wider. Thank you very much.
Alors, le nombre d'enfants non scolarisés du fait des conflits et des attaques terroristes et des déplacements forcés augmente au Burkina Faso et c'est l'avenir de toute une génération qui est menacée. Alors l'éducation est aujourd'hui plus que jamais l'arme puissante pour faire barrière à la violence, au terrorisme et à l'insécurité grandissante. Cependant, beaucoup reste encore à faire pour atteindre la scolarisation universelle. Des centaines de milliers d'enfants sont encore en dehors du système éducatif et cette situation est aggravée par les crises récurrentes. Le développement des activités inscrites dans le plan d'action triennal 2020-2022 de la stratégie révisée de l'éducation en situation d'urgence au Burkina Faso nécessite la mobilisation de 53 milliards de francs CFA, soit environ 90 millions de dollars sur les 3 ans. Aussi, je me réjouis de l'annonce faite par Education Cannot Wait relativement au financement pluriannuel dont le processus démarre bientôt.
So again, I would like to thank our partners, the Ministers of Education of Burkina Faso, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And it was good to see them with us today. What is important when we hear them testifying to the situation is that they are also hosting big number of refugees, and still they are not giving up, and it still try to bring hope. And we will continue working with all of you to invest in the Sahel, including in Burkina Faso, in the 3 regions of Somalia, and in Ethiopia. Another country that also has shown great solidarity with refugees crossing a border. And I have myself been there not long ago in the border of Rio Hacha, seeing how the government of Colombia, with a great sense of compassion, solidarity, has allowed refugees to cross in and worked with them to help them reintegrate into the public school system in Colombia. And it's therefore my honor to invite the Minister of Education of Colombia, Her Excellency Maria Victoria Angulo, to speak to us both about the situation on the ground, but also what can we as the international community do to support you in your great sense of solidarity and as a great refugee hosting country, trying your very best to cater to those left furthest behind crossing the border into Colombia. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Jasmine, for your question and for the opportunity to be here today, sharing our country experience. Colombia is a resilient country, which throughout the years has learned how to innovate, create learning opportunities in the midst of multiple crises. We have faced the consequence of an internal conflict, which has led the internal displacement and migration of millions of people. Currently, we are facing the second largest migration flow of the recent history, the massive exodus of Venezuela citizens arriving in Colombia. In addition to this challenging situation, we must also consider the effects of COVID-19 on all sectors, but especially on provision of education services. Under President Iván Duque government, the education sector has designed an inclusive education policy, focusing its efforts on access to quality education, fostering retention with gender equity at all education levels, and bringing learning in different formats to rural and urban contexts. In this aspect, it's important to say that the education budget has been the highest item in the national budget for the last 3 years. Since education is our priority above any difference or adversities, we are working with all partners, such UNICEF, UNESCO, Save the Children, Norway Refugee Council, World Vision, and Plan Foundation. as well as Colombia private sector to jointly achieve collect education outcomes. We are also working with the governments around the world to mobilize more resources for funding the gap in response to refugees and migrant crises. The education emergency cluster is very active in Colombia. Through the cluster, we have worked with partners to implement education in emergency response. Education Cannot Wait has provided significant support for the partners to address education in emergency, reaching the Venezuelan affected population and host communities. Thank you. Thank you for providing me this platform to present the challenges and the opportunity faced by the education system in Colombia. We will overcome with our partners the crisis and emergency and strengthen our resilience and the country response to ensure that no child is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Angela. Thank you so much. And also to reassure everyone, and you know this already, but we are about to launch a regional multi-year resilience program for the refugee crisis, where Colombia and Ecuador play a critically important role. And it's the outcome of a joint mission between Education Cannot Wait partners such as UNICEF, Save the Children, UNHR, that took place late last year. So we are very happy that we are able to continue and create more sustainable and multi-year approach to the refugee crisis. And thank you again for having patience with all of us. Now, I understand that the next speaker is running a little bit late, so I'm gonna jump in the agenda here and shift them around. And we'll go to the next intervention, which is a pre-recorded intervention by Dr. Maria Flachsbarth, who is the German Parliamentary State Secretary for Development. And let me say, before I hand over the floor to State Secretary for Economic Cooperation and Development, Maria Flachsbarth, that Germany has engaged with Education Cannot Wait in the most I would say admirable ways over the past years, and scaled up its support with a very strong commitment. Of course, the commitment of multilateralism that is so typical for them, but also a strong commitment to the multilateralism that Education Cannot Wait represents within the broader UN system. And also with a very strong financial support and contributions to Education Cannot Wait. So I am delighted to now share the pre-recorded video by our dear colleague and partner, Dr. Maria Flachsbarth of BMZ.
As co-host of today's event, I would like to wish you a warm welcome. Wherever you are tuning into this virtual event, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought daily life as we knew it to a stillstand. And it is rapidly threatening to reverse all the development progress we worked so hard to achieve over the past decades. The coronavirus crisis has made the global education crisis more worse, with schools being closed. Over 1 billion of girls and boys across the world are unable to go to school at the moment. Sadly, for many of them, it will not just be a temporary interruption in their education. Many children will never return to school again. UN Secretary General Guterres has rightly noted the coronavirus crisis is a generational catastrophe. We currently have the biggest generation of young people ever. Without education, they are losing out on knowledge, skills, socialization, self-confidence, and hope of a better future. The crisis is having the hardest impact on those who were already vulnerable and disadvantaged, children and young people who either come from poor families, are living with disabilities, have been forced to flee their homes, or are living in areas hit by conflict or disaster. And the worst hit of all are girls. We must not allow the COVID-19 crisis to leave them even further behind. We urgently need to step up our efforts to realize the right of all children and young people to an education and to give them hope for the future in these times of crisis even more than ever. We at the BMZ know education is the key to overcoming the crisis and to sustainable development. That is why we have mainstreamed education in our emergency COVID-19 support program to help lessen the impact of the pandemic in our partner countries. Our long-term aim is to invest 25% of our development spend in education. We particularly want to increase our work in countries affected by migration and displacement, such as the Syria region, together with the Malala Fund, to give girls access to free, high-quality primary and secondary education. And we will be turning our focus more towards working with multilateral partners such as GPE and Education Cannot Wait. On behalf of Minister Müller, I would like to thank Jasmine Sharif and the ECW Secretariat most warmly for all their hard work over the recent months. It is thanks to you that partner countries have received the urgently needed support so very quickly under ECW's COVID-19 first emergency response. For many countries, it was the only support they received. We want to continue supporting ECW's important work in future. So I'm pleased to be able to announce that Germany will be providing an additional 8 million euros to ECW in 2020. I hope that other partners will also commit more funding, because solidarity and cooperation are more important now than ever before if we want to ensure that we leave no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And I don't know if we can hear each other, but this is for a wonderful surprise contribution from Germany. Thank you very much. Danke sehr. Thank you, Dr. Flaxbart, for that generous contribution on behalf of the government of Germany. We were also very happy to learn that 25% of the development spending will go to education for refugees and displaced children and youth in crisis. I cannot not quote one of my favorite philosophers, Goethe, when he said, when you make a commitment, universe conspires to assist you. That's exactly what I felt right now. Thank you so very much. Thank you, sir. Now we are going to move over to another great, inspiring partner. And I am still jumping in the schedule because we have a late speaker. That is our inspiring, solid partner who was there when Education Cannot Wait was created and established, and who has been there throughout with us. And I think every year has come in showing continuous, steady, sustainable support to Education Cannot Wait. And that is the United States of America. And I have to thank Carol O'Connell, Principal Deputy Assistant, U.S. Secretary of State, the PR department, of course, representing the U.S. contribution. I please pass over to you, Carol. It's great to have you with us again, because you're always there pledging. Over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here once again with our esteemed colleagues and representatives from around the world. Education, especially in emergency settings, remains a high priority for the U.S. government. The Department of State is a leading advocate in ensuring humanitarian responses include access to quality and safe education, to ensure refugee children not only have the opportunity to attend, but also excel in school and in their communities. We are inspired by the progress made over the past few years with the creation of Education Cannot Wait, increased donor commitments, greater collaboration between humanitarian and development stakeholders, and host country leadership. We've seen increases in the number of students, teachers, and communities that have access to high quality education services. We already knew we had a long way to go in reaching more out of school children, but as many people have mentioned this morning, now COVID-19 pandemic threatens some of those gains. But we strongly believe that education can be life-changing and indeed life-saving. That's why we are continuously striving to ensure that a focus on education is better incorporated into crisis responses around the globe. All children are exposed to threats during and after emergencies. However, girls and boys without access to education are at much higher risk of violence, exploitation, abuse, and neglect. Safe and free education can help mitigate the impact of violence by giving children and families a sense of stability, structure, and hope for the future. Certain aspects of education are inherently promote protection for children. Schools are an important way to include parents in building safer conditions for children, both in and out of school. It's imperative that classrooms are not only spaces for letters and numbers, but also a safe place for children to express their concerns, build their resistance, learn life-saving skills, and obtain relevant information and services. We know now this is more important than ever, given the challenges posed by this ongoing pandemic. But who teaches these skills? The amazing and dedicated humanitarian staff, teachers, and other responders who have found alternative ways to support education in these uncertain times. However, we know that many of the gains made to date are at risk. Some children, especially girls, may not return to school. Many families will struggle to recover their livelihoods and may resort to negative coping mechanisms, such as child labor, that decrease the likelihood of a return to school. Our collective efforts to address these challenges now are therefore more important than ever. This brings me to the reason why the United States continues to strongly support Education Cannot Wait as an essential platform to bring together diverse donors. Fully evident as we look around the virtual table at the list of participants in today's event. We have got to continue to work together towards our collective goal of ensuring quality education for all children. It's always a privilege to represent the United States, but it's a particular honor to announce that my government will provide an additional $5 million to support the incredibly valuable work of Education Cannot Wait through the Department of State's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. As part of longstanding U.S. leadership in humanitarian assistance and diplomacy, we'll continue to do our part to make sure that education plays a key role in improving the lives of crisis-affected youth, their families, and their communities. Thank you very much.
Here I am. Thank you so much. Another Happy New, and I know you always do this when I see you, Carol. So thank you very much again for just another additional generous contribution from the population, refugees, and the migration department, and as just launched or pledged by the principal deputy assistant, U.S. Secretary of State, Carol O'Connell, and you did it last year as well when we had our big event, and we really and genuinely appreciate the generosity and the support that you show, making it possible for us to work so focused on refugee education together with our partners, UNHCR and civil society and UNICEF and many others. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you. I will then Thanks. I will thank you in person when I see you.
I know, really, yeah. Thank you for all the work that you're doing every day.
Well, we are spurred. We are spurred by you and your team and everyone's team. No one can do this alone. It's all of us. Now we move over to our next great speaker, who is also part of being one of the founders, just like the US were one of the founders of Education Cannot Wait in 2016. And I am very delighted, very much so, to introduce a great leader whom I actually had the privilege of traveling together with to central Mali last year. We went to the central part of Mali and saw the internally displaced children arriving. We saw UNICEF, Save the Children, and others using whatever means they had to provide some sort of response in the education sector on arrival. And I think what struck us both was more resources are needed to empower them to do their job. Resources are terribly lacking. But what also struck me was to see what a great leader the minister, I will not name him yet, was, with the people-centeredness and the very genuine sense of humanity and commitment to be there for those left furthest behind. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Minister Dag Ulstein, Minister for Development of Norway. Välkommen. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. And again, dear friends, together with the Norwegian Youth Delegate on Education, Sunniva Høiskaas, sitting here together with me, this is the message from the Norwegian government. Because in times like this, we have to act on facts. And the facts are these: when kids go to school, there is less hunger, less disease, and less recruitment to extremism. When the kids don't go to school, however, child marriages, domestic violence, and modern slavery are likely to be up. The story about how humanity handled COVID-19 is being written now, and education will have a central place in the conclusions. Let it not become the story of a lost generation, nor of a community that abandoned its promise to leave no one behind when push came to shove. Let it rather be the story of a global community which came together to ensure that the right to learn was upheld for all, also for the COVID generation. That is how we define community, by the way. Since its establishment in 2016, as already heard, Education Cannot Wait has reached more than 3.5 million crisis-affected children and youth. When the pandemic hit, Education Cannot Wait and partners responded swiftly to ensure continued access to education. And today I'm also pleased to announce that Norway will make an additional pledge of 20 million kroner to Education Cannot Wait. And this brings Norway's total contribution up to almost $60 million. We are all facing hard fiscal priorities, but Norway encouraged all partners to maintain or even increase their investments in education in emergencies. Education is the major pathway to eradicating poverty and to reaching all the other sustainable development goals. There will be books written about 2030 also. We will have no chance of success if we take school away from children in crisis, be it in conflicts, COVID-19 or catastrophes caused by climate change. And that's a fact. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Minister Ulstein. And again, I end up clapping for myself, but I know that the world claps for you as well, for just being on the remote side. Thank you very much for, first of all, the powerful speech, but also thanks for yet another generous contribution. Norway is the second largest strategic donor contributor to Education Cannot Wait and was part of founding Education Cannot Wait. So therefore, one of our absolute lifelines. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much, Minister Olsen. And I know that we will find time to travel and meet up again and see the results on the ground. Thank you so much for your leadership and support. Now, I think we're ending this session. And what I will do, I am not going to repeat what all the great speakers have said, as you would normally do as a moderator, in the interest of time. And also they can deliver those words of passion, wisdom, and knowledge so much better than I can. So I will move up to the next thematic session. And that takes us to the next speaker. You know, if you go into be a collective partnership in a global fund, you need to be in a conducive environment for that fund. If you don't have a conducive environment where you're hosted, if everything you're trying to do is blocked by bureaucracy, or if there is no support, you simply can't do it. ECW is so blessed and so lucky to be hosted in UNICEF with all the firewalls and the independence that we have, but also with the incredible moral support and inspiration that we receive from our host, who also leads the delivery of education in emergency in country, while also supporting Education Cannot Wait. So it is with my honor and privilege to introduce the very supportive host of ECW and the lead agency on education in emergencies and crisis to deliver in the most complex circumstances. Our very dear Henrietta Fore, Executive Director of UNICEF. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, and it's great to see so many partners that we work with all over the world on this call. So thank you very much. Education cannot wait. So Gordon began with talking about 3 children in the Moria camp in Greece, and it is that I'd like to build on. One of our real concerns is that while many children are going back to school this month, there are millions of children who do not have a school to go back to. So Education Cannot Wait is one of the great platforms in which you can help those children who do not have a school to go back to. Gordon also mentioned that this is a crisis. It's a learning crisis. It is a humanitarian crisis, and it's one that we are seeing in almost every country in the world. The numbers are so massive for all of us that sometimes maybe we just don't really internalize them. But if you are just one child and you're at home with your family, it is very meaningful change in your life. So we've got to get them back to school. So may I echo the call that people are making for reimagining education, of changing our way of thinking, of rewriting the story, as Daginda mentioned. We really have to refresh our thinking about what education can be. So let me give you 4 thoughts. One is the quality of education. Yasmin mentioned it in her opening, but young people now need foundational skills. They need to have soft skills, what we will consider soft skills, but entrepreneurial skills. They've got to have occupational skills, because many who are refugees and migrants are not going to have that chance, as Liz mentioned, the brilliant student. They won't have a chance to go to university. And so they've got to find a livelihood, and they're going to need digital skills. So number 1, quality. Number 2 is universality. All children need this. It doesn't matter if you are in a connected world or an unconnected world, or rural or an urban world. All children need it. So we have got to come up with hybrid solutions, things that work in low-tech and no-tech situations, and those that reach rural and urban areas, face-to-face and remote. And third, we need to be proactive in humanitarian cases, and that's why ECW is making such a brilliant ask today. The humanitarian spots are harder than all the rest. So those who are living in or fleeing from conflict are hard to find, hard to settle down, hard to get them into a learning space. And then lastly, the fourth area is that of safety. Carol mentioned it, Doug Inga mentioned it, but schools do more than education. They are also safe places for children. And we have got to try to help them create and have those safe places. So final message is invest, invest, invest. Financially, operationally, intellectually, invest. Let's have learning for all and let's rewrite the story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edie, for this very inspiring and passionate, but also insightful understanding of what needs to be done. And again, I will not repeat what you have said because you said it so eloquently and so much better and in the interest of time. But thank you again from the bottom of our hearts, Edie. We will now move on to a video, and we will listen to the teachers who are the role models, who are often the substitute, especially in crisis where you lost your parents, you lost siblings, you lost everything. And the school is the only safety that you have. And there's a lot of responsibilities on their shoulders because they too are victims of conflict and displacement. And still, they have to shoulder responsibilities for themselves, their families, and for all the pupils. So we will hear their story now, and we will play a video.
Before the COVID-19, the school was really busy. We would think if there is no school and there is no education, what will be the future of these children?
بظل أزمة فيروس كورونا المستجد، طلع قرار بتسكير كل المدارس.
Staying at home these days is very hard. Their parents, they are engaging them in agricultural activities.
They say they are missing school, they are missing their teachers. For them, they were saying that they already had that hope that they would now transit from the trauma that they came with because the school was giving them that hope. So now they are getting a little demoralized because they are not at school.
They say reading is becoming very difficult. Some words has now disappeared from their mind.
Fue un cambio radical para los niños, para los padres de familia, para la comunidad en general.
Most of us, the teachers, thought there is no job. Because when the school is not going on, why should you go as a teacher? That one brought a lot of stress. We came to life when we were called back to go and follow up our learners.
Durante esta época de pandemia, mis prácticas académicas han sido replanteadas totalmente.
ما كان في قدامنا حل إلا أنه نعتمد تقنية التعلم عن بعد. هون بلشت التحديات. واجهنا كثير من الصعوبات والمطبات، خاصة إنه الوضع الاقتصادي والأمني بلبنان منه مستقر، مما أثر سلباً على هيدي التقنية، بس بالنهاية نجحنا.
Inicialmente solo 3 niños contaban con internet en casa. Con los demás me tocó comunicarme a través de llamadas telefónicas y a través de mensajes de WhatsApp.
توجهنا إلى توفير مواد تعليمية لهؤلاء الطلاب. حاولنا أن نعد الدروس بطريقة شيقة وممتعة لهؤلاء الطلاب ونبثها عبر مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي لتصل لأكبر شريحة ممكنة من الطلاب ويستفيد منها.
نجحنا بمساعدة الأهالي اللي كانوا صلة وصل ما بين الأستاذ والطالب.
Siento que se han fortalecido los lazos de interacción entre el padre, de familia y el docente.
Hoy por hoy los maestros han tenido el apoyo de diferentes entidades que han venido a fortalecer todo este trabajo.
استخدمنا هذه الأدوات في حرب 2012 وحرب 2014 والآن نحن نستخدمه في ظل وجود فيروس كورونا. حتى لو انقطعنا عن الدراسة نحن حاضرون في قلب وعقل كل طالب.
Our prayer is that it should go down so that the school opens and we begin our normal duties.
Okay, maybe I've been told to shorten my introductions because we are running behind, but I see Kevin waiting there, and let me just introduce someone who has been absolutely instrumental in pleading and advocating for children and youth left furthest behind and the right to equality education for many, many years, leading up to the World Humanitarian Summit and the ODA report that he drafted. And here he is, Kevin Watkins, who continues to be the voice for the voiceless, to make education in emergencies and protracted crisis a top priority. CEO of UK Save the Children. Over to you, Kevin.
Yasmin, really big thank you. And I want to say on behalf of all of us in Save the Children, how proud we are to be associated with you and your colleagues with Education Cannot Wait. We're working with you in 16 countries, and in many of those countries, we're working with the teachers that we've just been hearing from. And those teachers are really the heroes on the front line of this crisis. Yasmin, one word that you've used quite a lot today and that others have used is hope. And Desmond Tutu once said that hope is being able to see that there is light despite the darkness. And if I think of all of the many inspiring and humbling experiences that I've had in doing program visits for Save the Children, I think the thing that really stands out is the hope that children can retain, even in the most desperate circumstances. You know, when you speak to a 12-year-old who has walked from South Sudan into Uganda, carrying their books in the belief that they can somehow get an education that will rebuild their lives. When you speak to a young Syrian refugee girl who has been picking fruit so that her family can survive, speaking about her belief that if she can get an education, she can become an engineer, that is inspiration. I think what Education Cannot Wait is doing, it is keeping the light on, it is keeping hope alive for millions of children around the world. So it's really imperative now that governments, as we respond to this appalling emergency in education, get behind Education Cannot Wait and get behind the children. They have the hope, they have the courage, we have to get behind them. Thank you, Yasmin.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you so much. And it must be also rewarding for you to see how we continue to grow because it was a seed of an idea, of an innovative idea in you and many others who were part of it that today has come to blossom. But again, we cannot rest until we have reached every child. So we have to balance between being joyful for what we achieve and also remind ourselves of the reality on the ground. And you, Kevin, is very good at that. You always remind us. Thank you so very much. Now we'll move on to the next speaker, who again has done a pre-recorded message for us. Still, it's also one of our staunchest partnerships, supporters, with a very powerful agenda to really invest in education for those left furthest behind through the humanitarian development nexus, and has made a strong commitment to move at that speed, but not compromise on quality, and recognize that education is a development sector, but to implement a development sector in crisis needs to be done with speed. And that's what Education Cannot Wait is about. And we are very happy and I'm pleased to introduce the great Commissioner Urpilainen of DEFCO, whose enormous support to Education Cannot Wait on behalf of the EU and the EC is unmistakable. Please.
Dear friends, I'm very pleased that this event is taking place today. There is an urgency. The pandemic is starting to reverse decades of progress towards sustainable development goals. The crisis has revealed and deepened inequalities, particularly weaknesses of our education systems have been exposed. There is a real risk for many children of never returning to education, especially for the poorest and the most vulnerable children. This cannot happen. As a former teacher myself, I'm fully convinced of the power of education. Investment in education is a powerful tool to eradicate poverty and reduce inequalities. I have decided to boost the share of education in the EU development expenditure. We need to make the education systems more inclusive and more resilient. We must come together to coordinate further our investments to our purpose of leaving no children behind. Education cannot wait mobilizes a collective response to urgent needs in education in emergencies. I'm proud that the European Union was part of its inception. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reopen schools better than they were before and improve learning. Every child deserves the skills they need to succeed in life, school, and work. Now, more than ever, education cannot wait.
Wow, thank you so very much, Commissioner Urpilainen. Thank you, European Commissioner, and all colleagues who are listening in. Please pass on our warmest thanks for this very powerful intervention and the strong support that is with us and the great partnership that we have with you. Thank you so very much. I am being told that we need to move faster. That means I need to speak less. So we move on then to the next passionate advocate, another strong woman leader with whom I had the pleasure to have fruitful, very inspiring discussions, and who has a very strong personal and professional commitment to refugee education. It's my honor to introduce Minister Karine Gold of Canada. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, and thank you to everyone at ECW for organizing and bringing this event together. It's such a delight to be with all of you today on behalf of the Government of Canada. So good morning from Canada. I'm so delighted to be able to discuss with you how we can reimagine education in emergencies in the wake of COVID-19, specifically about how we help learners learn. The pandemic forces us to reimagine all aspects of education, from policy to practice. This means directly empowering the voices of local communities, of refugees, of internally displaced persons in every aspect of our work. And support for teachers is crucial. We know that education starts with teachers. They are the cornerstone in delivering quality learning in safe environments. They are on the front lines and from communities that we are working with. And I've had the pleasure over the past couple of months of talking to some of the teachers with whom we work, and they, like the people that we saw in the video, are the absolute true heroes who are doing such incredible work connecting with their students and making sure that they can continue to be engaged and continue to learn. During the pandemic, they are finding creative approaches to distance learning and are reaching learners through, as we saw, various media, what's television, radio, SMS, and the internet. And what we've also heard and seen is that the digital divide is very real. Refugee teachers and those working in conflict and crisis settings are at a particular disadvantage, and they face strains on resources that make it particularly difficult to deliver quality education. Teachers, especially in conflict and crisis settings, need training and tools. They need training on digital skills, how to develop lesson plans, evaluation, and how to engage students and support their psychosocial well-being. Tools including ready-made assessments, lesson plans, and evaluations so they can assess needs and make up for the loss of learning that has occurred. But Canada is committed and is acting in this space. We are moving fast. in international development education programming, particularly paying attention to the needs of adolescent girls and those in forcibly displaced situations, the very most vulnerable during these vulnerable times. And we are exploring options to provide targeted funding for immediate needs, including distance learning, teacher training, child protection, and psychosocial support, and the prevention of gender-based violence. Because as we've heard, schools are not just a place for learning, but they're a safe place for children as well. And so in addition to the $5.5 million in top-up funding that we provided to Education Cannot Wait's COVID response, Canada is supporting UNICEF Canada in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Burkina Faso, and Mali to provide training to teachers and social workers on gender-responsive remote learning and psychosocial support for refugee and displaced girls. In Sierra Leone and Liberia, we're working with CODE to provide online training sessions for teachers on radio programming, gender equality, and lesson planning. In closing, Canada is committed to expand support for global education and is developing a campaign to ensure that all refugee and displaced children get the education they need and deserve, and that they are involved every step of the way. This includes support for teachers in displaced situations and supporting displaced populations, and we will reach out to many of you here today to find solutions that bridge the digital divide and support teachers in their essential job of educating a generation, both during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Gold. Thank you. We can feel your serious commitment, and we are aware about the great contributions that the government of Canada is doing, both to ECW, but often also directly in country and through all our partner organizations, ECW, UNICEF, and many others that you mentioned. You did mention something important that I would like to highlight, because that refers to our next speaker. It is so important to listen to those who have the first-hand experience. And Miranda Nidolo, she's from Cameroon. She's 24 years old. She has experienced the fact of being a forcibly displaced adolescent girl. She will speak to us about the realities on the ground. What does it mean, digital access and remote education in a kind of crisis or during displacement? So I have the absolute privilege and humility to introduce Miranda Nidolo from Cameroon. Please.
Good morning, everyone. I will be speaking from my experience growing up in Cameroon, currently undergoing crisis and violence. Digital access to education is a huge challenge, especially in rural communities, as a result of no internet connection or limited access to internet connection. Moreover, TV and radio modes of transmission are not quite dependable because there is a limited supply or no electricity in these regions. We can therefore tell that with the COVID-19, a lot has been affected regarding education in regions and communities affected by the double crisis. That's the Anglophone crisis and the COVID-19. However, there's a faint pickup of classes going up with children having to meet in public places around their communities, such as playgrounds and tree sheds, to be able to learn again, and of course, respecting the barrier measures put in place. However, the implementation of remote learning does not replace the need for a space that children had in the classrooms. Having a safe physical place to go is crucial for a child's well-being, and teachers are still trying to meet those needs in an ever-changing environment. The unreliability of digital access to education makes it clear that it needs to be supported by offline resources. So when thinking about some of the key considerations trying to deliver these interventions, I suggest that teachers should be provided with materials that facilitate learning, such as paper-based materials, school supplies for learners, and internet accessibility. Furthermore, security for teachers should be reinforced. At least 100 teachers have lost their lives as a result of the ongoing crisis, especially those who make an extra push to ensure that learning continues. This is how education gets left out when it's a matter of life and death. I don't have time to go into all the considerations, but parents and community members also play a role in supporting remote learning and should work at ensuring that these learning spaces are expanded and can accommodate more children, and in addition should respect their rights of accessing education freely. Finally, the opportunity to engage in digital learning makes me feel excited about the future of our generation. And if learners can learn digitally and get connected to all the resources and opportunities that exist, then we will move from just surviving to thriving. Thank you all for listening, and thank you for the work you do. Right now, I would like to introduce the next speaker on the list, Jaime Saavedra, the Global Education Director for World Bank.
Great, thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks Miranda for those words. And I really want to thank Yasmin for the opportunity to work together. I think we're all worried that a victim of this pandemic, of the largest education crisis of the last 100 years, is equality of opportunities. And this is a moment to make education more equitable, more efficient, more resilient, but it has to be for everyone and for everywhere. And that's not happening, as many of you have said, but there is hope also, as Kevin was saying. But one of our main concerns is that we cannot forget that for education to be the life-changing insurance that can potentially be, we need to make sure that effective learning happens, even in the most harsh and challenging situations. And we need to be obsessed, really, that learning happens. So as Henrietta was already starting to reflect, is we need to worry a lot about the how. And this will require immense flexibility and creativity. Our education services will need to adapt to the different circumstances. And one key point is that we'll need to combine, as some of you have already mentioned, we need to combine the low tech with the high tech. In some places in which there is no access to technology, we cannot wait for the digital divide to be closed. And we need to make sure that children have the books and the printed material, and that parents and caregivers have the support in order to make sure that they can work with them. In other cases, there might not be enough teachers, and we need to use technology for independent learning. And there are already technological solutions that can help us on that. And third, the combination of remote learning and presential learning will be part of the school of the future. Will require a continuum of learning from the different places, from the school to the home, but that will require that we continue supporting much more teachers in these difficult circumstances, and also parents. Let me close saying that it will be naive not to acknowledge that it's financial capacity, it is the resources, but it's also operational capacity on the ground. And it's the politics that often stand between children in fragile settings and these solutions. And I want to close by mentioning that it's absolutely for us critical to work in partnerships with all of you, based on the comparative advantage of each one of the partners. And the World Bank has a large portfolio on fragile and conflict settings. And it's critical for all of us to put together those funds, for instance, as the in-country resources that Yasmin always says that they need to complement the work with ECW. Right, our partnership with UNHCR, with UNICEF, with ACW, the partnership that we have announced with GPE and ECW in the Global Refugee Forum are just examples of the way that we need to continue working together on the ground in order to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Jaime Saavedra, who is the Global Director for Education at the World Bank and a very strong partner of the whole Education Cannot Wait community. And we do believe that the partnership with World Bank, and with you also, with all the insight that you bring with you as a former education minister yourself in Peru, right? Yes.
That's correct.
That always reminds us also of the realities on the ground and what it looks like. It was great. Thank you so very much for being with us today. Now again, they remind me I have to move fast. I hope that if we run 10 minutes over, that you will all stay with us. It's late in the afternoon here, and I hope that we are able to go through everyone. We'll move to the next. We will now move on to the next agenda, which is the session on responsive, resilient, holistic delivery. And again, I will let our speakers speak to the subject matter. I wanted to see, are we moving ahead with a video from the field, and then I will introduce the next speaker.
Dommage que chez nous en Centrafrique, notre système éducatif est vraiment malade. La corruption en milieu scolaire. 92% des élèves ont confirmé que la vente de notes existe dans leurs établissements et 112% ont répondu que la NST existe dans leurs établissements aussi. La note sexuellement transmissible qui est un abus inacceptable sur les enfants.
I'm 17 years old, dreaming of growing wings. I vibrate between girlhood and womanhood. We're reminded every day that because we are girls, we must walk fast, must lower our gaze, must stay in the light. Mother says education is worth risking your life for, that it is my right. We pledge allegiance to water, to its dutiful scarcity. We do not bow to thirst and the shadow it casts over our lives.
COVID-19 has turned our world upside down, and children from poor families have suffered most of all. But 370 million of the poorest children didn't just lose the opportunity to learn, they were also deprived of a free school meal, often their only food for the day. School health and nutrition programs are a lifeline for poor families all around the world, and it's especially critical for those children living with conflict or other crises. Many of these vulnerable kids are among the 850 million children today still shut out of the classroom. So getting them back into the school is essential if we're going to avoid a hunger pandemic triggered by the COVID crisis. That's why WFP, Education Cannot Wait, and UNICEF are going all out to help governments reopen their schools safely. We're determined to ensure every single child gets the nourishment they need to learn and to thrive.
Love always finds a way to exist, even in here.
Okay, thank you.
Moving testimony to the situation on the ground, but also a very good reminder that we need to look at this from a holistic intersectoral approach. And I think it was very good that we could have WFP with us today to see the importance of not going to school hungry in order to learn. And it's so important of looking at education from a holistic perspective, psychosocial services, protection, and reducing poverty, and having the access to food and nutrition. It also reminded us of something else, and that's the importance of girls' education and of empowering young girls through education. And who can better do that than a powerful girl who overcame all obstacles on her way as she fled her war-ravaged country. I'm again humbled and moved to introduce Sara Mardini, youth advocate, who is an extraordinary woman who together with her sister fled across the Mediterranean. The boat capsized, and she and her sister, they were fleeing Syria. They were both professional swimmers. They got into the water, and for 7 hours, they pushed the boat with all fleeing children, youth, their families on the boat into safety on the Greek islands. And from there, took on to support refugees awaiting asylum, seeking asylum on the Greek islands in the camps, and helping other refugees and kids in the camps to get educated, to access education. So she made the impossible possible, drawing on her own experience. That's power. And I will now hand over to Sara Mardini, youth advocate. Please tell us your story, tell us what we can learn from you.
Hi, thank you so much, Yasmin, for the very strong introduction. I really appreciate it. So as you mentioned earlier, back in 2015, me and my sister Yusra Mardini, who was back then 17 and I was 20, we were forced to flee our homeland, which is Damascus city in Syria. And of course, when you say forced to flee, I think people doesn't really think beyond this idea that you just had to leave, but they don't think that you left so many things behind, which is your life and your education in first place. And I was in my 3rd year of law school in Syria, and I had 1 year to graduate, and I had to leave because either I will continue my education, I will be dead. And me and my sister and my family believe that if we just try to reach another safe place or safe country or land, they guarantee that we're gonna have a right, and then someone will accept us and give us education and continue our dreams. So after we made it to Germany, my sister Yusra joined the refugee Olympic team, and she took her path as a professional athlete, where I was guaranteed a full scholarship in Bard College Berlin, where they started education program for refugees, which every student will be sponsored. And now I'm in my 3rd year, and I think what I believe that I've been given a chance, that I had so many ideas and so many hopes and dreams, and I wanted to share it, but still I didn't have the academic words to it. I didn't have the mindset to write a paper and argue about someone case in Greece. And being part of Bard College Berlin, that gave me the chance to actually speak up about myself in the more official legal way, and I can guarantee that people will listen to me. Part of also my work, I was working in Moria refugee camp for 3 years, and unfortunately, what was mentioned earlier today, there was a fire in Moria which left the camp into ashes. So before the fire, Moria refugee camp had 0 privacy, 0 human rights, and there's no living conditions at all. And one of these serious issues that we've been seeing every day, that kids were running around, not being educated, they've been put out there in a very mixed culture, or very mixed space, where you have your own culture and then you have volunteers and activists coming from a different culture. And then the kids are just picking up something from everybody, and they don't even know if it's right or wrong to say that. And that goes back for the main aspect, that there was no education, there was no school, that the kid will just go and ask their teacher if it's right to say that or not, if it's a good idea or a bad one, if I'm gonna be harmed or not. So, and we all know that to make sure that all the refugees get into a safe place, it will take so many years. But something we learned from COVID-19, that education could be reachable in 1 click, which I think it's a huge and strong opportunity for us to take it to Greece and to the shorelines of Greece, I'm speaking just for Greece because I'm experienced with the area, but I think every refugee deserves the right to study. And we have great examples about refugees who actually been given chances and they are creating something out of it. We have Masoon Al-Malhan, and she works with Malala Fund, and she proved that I don't want to say a refugee, any human deserves an education and they can do something out of it. We have my sister who's from Ardini who is integrated and educated into the society and now applying for university, and she's an Olympic athlete. We have Maya Ghazal, because she got education, she became the first solo pilot refugee. So we have so much potentials and we have so many years of holding back our dreams, and we just want a book that we can express ourselves in the best way. That's how important is education. I think it is as important as giving medicine to someone, because you will keep the children motivated. They will hope there's a future tomorrow, and they will hope that this will end just because I know and just because I'm reading a book. So thank you everybody for your donations and for how much you're collaborating. It's very important. It's one of the main important things as water and air, to be educated and to give these kids a tool so they can fight back the trauma and the life risking journeys that they quest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It must be very rewarding to do the work that you are doing, and you are so perfect for doing what you're doing. That's how we change the world. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and thanks for multiplying that strength around you. That's inspiration. Thank you so very much. We now move on to Rachel Brosnahan. She was quickly on a clip at the opening, but she has done more than that for children and youth and SDG4 in situations of emergencies and protracted crisis. And besides being an Emmy-winning actor, she is an incredible champion and a wonderful supporter of the work that we are doing. And she has sent the following message to us.
When I traveled to Peru last year with Global Citizen, I had the immense privilege of meeting some of the communities that ECW supports and heard their gratitude firsthand. I remember being struck by the scale of the problem. Many of these kids were not just homeless, but also malnourished, traumatized, scared, and lonely, had been persecuted for being in the LGBTQ community, lacked access to clean water, sanitation, and hygiene or health checks. Their parents talked about how school had provided so many of these things for their kids and how they missed their classrooms and teachers and the physical and emotional security the routine was able to provide. Parents were worried about the trauma their kids had already endured, whether it be in the aftermath of a natural disaster like the 2017 mudslides, or on a long and treacherous journey from Venezuela to Peru. They were concerned that their children had already missed months or longer of an education, particularly girls who were more exposed to physical and psychological threats. They also talked about their hopes and dreams for their families' futures and the opportunities that school could provide. I met one incredible young girl from Venezuela, Ana, who, as a 14-year-old refugee herself, had befriended her neighbors who had recently arrived. The parents shared similar concerns about how safe school would be for their daughters. But after 6 months, Ana convinced them to let their 2 teenage daughters go back to school. Those 2 girls, who were losing hope away from the power of a classroom, are now back to pursuing their dreams of becoming a lawyer and a teacher. That is the power of young people, of young refugees, of young women who, despite and maybe because of what they've been through, are determined and brave to give back to the communities who welcome them and to show all of us their untold potential. Education Cannot Wait makes a difference because they know and respond to the complex needs of every child. They don't just repair buildings and build schools. They support the nutrition, mental health, protection and gender programs that run within them. They equip and train and support teachers who work in these difficult settings to relate to their students. And I have seen it. I've witnessed it firsthand and been so incredibly moved by it. I've heard the stories from the parents, from the teachers, from community workers, and most importantly, from the kids themselves. But the need is growing. I encourage all of you, individuals, governments, the private sector, to come forward and give what you can. Let's not let education become a forgotten casualty of this crisis, because we need education more than ever right now.
Thank you very much for that beautiful message, and also for the great work that Rachel Brosnahan is actually doing, meeting with many stakeholders to encourage support for refugee education. I will now move on, and I will introduce one dear colleague in the UN system, who will then introduce another great partner in the French government. So that will help us save us some time. So the French ambassador and Secretary General for the UN's Global Forum, Delphine O. I'm sorry, I won't introduce it, but that will be done by our dear friend and colleague Stefania. However, you're just as warmly welcome to Education Cannot Wait as everyone is here. So it's nice to see you. But let me move over to Stefania Gianni, who is our very close partner in Education Cannot Wait. She's Assistant Director General for Education in UNESCO, and UNESCO is also the appointed lead on SDG 4 in the UN system, and we do a lot of work together on the ground. I hand over to you, Stefania, and thank you for all the great partnership that we have together, not the least the last one on Lebanon, where we moved swiftly together following the explosion, among many other things. Over to you, Stefania.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, for your great job and great partnership we have with all our partners together sitting in the room today. We heard a lot of touching stories before my contribution now, and you mentioned Lebanon. So let me start with a very personal impression I had visiting the country immediately after the tragedy that Beirut experienced on 4th August. Which somehow sums up, in my opinion, why we have no choice but to build more responsive, resilient education systems. Together with the minister and the director general of UNESCO, we stood, principal of the school, we stood in a school shattered, literally totally shattered by the explosion. And in the midst of such distress, the urgency is to get children and youth learning again. And we launched the Leave Beirut flagship initiative while visiting the city. And the one main aim now is to support the Minister of Education of Lebanon, entire community, in reconstructing schools and getting education back, schools and universities, and getting education back on its feet. We are deeply grateful to ECW for the immediate emergency funding in this situation. Well, building back resilience requires a seamless transition between immediate urgency, assistance, and support in education systems step by step over time to transform. It's about carrying on value for a learner and for every society. And let me say very clearly that as COVID has disrupted the education all around the world, now is the time for this, is the time for inclusion. All means all, as the GEM report mentioned some weeks ago. And inclusion should be the start and the finish of every policy. In this context, let me stress our commitment to implement the global impact on refugees that calls for the inclusion of refugees in national education systems. Another last point I would like to stress is the importance of data. We know for sure that solid data is the precondition for advancing inclusion, for respond to crisis. And there is a very shared understanding among all partners that better data matters. And UNESCO, together with ECW, NORCAP, support from Swedish SIDA, has launched an interesting initiative. I think that it's to provide tools and better data to the entire education community, strengthening EMIS and data for increased resilience to crisis. This project will provide really a new vision, practical tools, capacity building, and coordination about between humanitarian and national actors. So we need this knowledge, we need this support, we need the great kind of new partnership that within this crisis we are experiencing. And I think that we are about to capitalize for the next coming months. And now I have the pleasure and the honor to give the floor to Ms. Delfino, French Ambassador and Secretary General for the UN Women's Global Forum, who is our next speaker. Madame Delphine, Madame l'ambassadrice, je donne la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Madame l'assistante directrice générale. Thank you very much to Education Cannot Wait for inviting me. I will speak on behalf both of the French government and the Generation Equality Forum. I would like to say that education, and in particular education in fragile settings, and particular education for the most disadvantaged groups of children, is a priority of France's policy for international cooperation. And as an ambassador for women's rights, you might expect me to focus specifically on one of the most disadvantaged groups of children in school, namely girls. And I would like to go back to the title of this event, which is subtitled "For Those Left Furthest Behind." Unfortunately, in many, many settings all around the world, girls and teenage girls are often those who are left furthest behind. Why is girls' education even more a challenge than just education all around the world? Why is each and every girl's access to quality education such a huge challenge? For three reasons. First, we need to ensure that girls are able to learn in safe and healthy environments, free from any gender-based violence. Second, we need to continue day and day to fight gender stereotypes at school and to encourage girls' leadership, as well as their access to innovation and opportunities. And third, we need to ensure that teenage girls can benefit from comprehensive sexuality education and adequate reproductive health services, because if a young girl, a teenage girl becomes pregnant, then usually she stops going to school. So this is what we're really focusing on, as well as this is all the more true in conflict and crisis contexts, in which usually the girls are often the hardest hit when schools are closing. And this is what we're seeing with the COVID crisis. And actually, this is the Director General of UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay, who has noticed that up to 11 million girls are at risk of not returning to school because of the pandemic. 11 million girls, probably even more than boys. So in the context of the Generation Equality Forum, we're really trying to focus on education of girls. The Generation Equality Forum is convened by UN Women and co-hosted by the governments of France and Mexico with the participation of civil society. It is the Beijing Plus 25 event. It is the largest, most historical conference, world conference for women's rights that we've been waiting for since the Beijing conference in 1995. We are making sure that in each of our action coalitions, we have 6 action coalitions, education is transversal, education is cross-cutting, and we are asking all of our action coalitions to make sure that at least one of the action in each of the action coalitions is specifically focusing on girls and teenage girls. So we're making a Generation Equality Forum a very important key moment for women's and girls' rights. At the national level, France has also been undertaking efforts to mainstream gender issues in the Global Partnership for Education. It has also launched, you may remember, last year during the French G7 presidency, the Gender at the Center initiative with the support of UNESCO and UNGAI to support partner countries, including in the Sahel. And I know that the Sahel region is at the forefront of Education Cannot Wait emergency responses. And we're very happy to be working with ECW. As well as France is collaborating closely with Education Cannot Wait in Lebanon, which has been just mentioned before, through the strengthening of the public education system, even more a priority now that unfortunately Lebanon has experienced the blast on August 4. So education is a fundamental right that we take very seriously in France and within the Generation Equality Forum. We consider specifically that girls' education should be one of the focus, and we hope that saving our future and building the generation equality will come hand to hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I would like to thank you, Delphine O, and I would like to thank Stefania Giannini, both of you for coming together and stressing the emphasis on so many issues, especially girls' education. I think that's been a theme throughout this event today, but also on data, if you were to achieve learning outcome. I think you complemented each other very well. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, because you're now concluding this thematic session. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much. And I know you have to rush. We are moving on to the very last part, and I apologize to our colleagues and partners in the last part of the event, having to wait because we have run over time a few minutes. Now, we are moving on to the last part that refers to creative partnerships. Creativity, diversity of thought, and new ways of working as a powerful thought of transformation. Well, that takes also personality, and it sits in the minds and the way how we come together. Some of those who are going to speak, well, all of them, they have that in their DNA, in the blood, in their bones. They are the ones that pull us all together. And I am so delighted to introduce the first speaker, Sarah Brown, who is the chair of Their World and the Global Business Coalition, who too was part of driving the campaign for Education Cannot Wait, but also is bringing together youth advocates, the business community, the private sector community at the global level to remind us all never, ever to forget about education in crisis and emergencies as a top priority. And so I am very pleased and delighted to introduce you, Sarah, and you go, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yasmin. I think that as we're addressing creative partnerships, that we're very aware that what we're in is the hopes and dreams business, and it's a very great privilege to be there. And the more we can do with creative partnerships, the more we can build in that area. And the rest of the speakers in this session will very much reflect that. What we know is that the important role of governments and their duty is to deliver. And sometimes to get that big machinery moving, we need quite unlikely partners to come together. Just the creation of Education Cannot Wait will tell you that. And as we say at Their World and at the Global Business Coalition, what we really need to do is unlock big change. Education in emergencies is an area where that could not be truer. Every single speaker has talked about funds being short and the need being great. And the greatest example we're hearing time again is what we've seen in the Greek islands, where we've heard of the plight of the refugees there. We saw the horrific fire last week in Moria camp on Lesbos. We're now seeing today the pictures of those refugees being moved to a new camp that nobody has high hopes is going to be much better than the last one. And the footage that we're seeing, those young people there on the move look really quite frightened by the prospects of what's ahead of them. Education brings back that hope. Because of the way the donor governments work, there's always been an excuse not to include funding to Greece for refugee education. What we were able to do at Their World was team up with the Dutch postcode lottery to mobilize funding for the first response in the Greek islands, working with Education Cannot Wait. Bringing in UNHCR, bringing in UNICEF, thousands of children have been able to be learning in a center right by the former Moria camp. And now with the camp having been reduced to ashes, that center has been housing displaced refugees, being really flexible with the way it's looked after some of the unaccompanied youth, and we will return it to its full education potential as soon as we can. We can do that because of the creativity and the flexibility of everyone working together. Another quick example, the REACT initiative at the Global Business Coalition for Education matches the private sectors with organizations working on the ground, where the expertise and resources that those corporations have can support better delivery. There are all kinds of examples. You can look at the website and find them. I'm not even going to touch on them now. Next week on Monday at Their World's UN side event, we have a CEO roundtable for UNGA, bringing together business leaders to discuss how they can mobilize collectively for education. And we invite business leaders to join us on that journey. And our partner always in that is Education Cannot Wait, where we're delivering in emergency situations. I know Tariq will speak in a moment and talk about the plans for Expo of really unlocking some of the most innovative ideas, and we're happy to engage in partnership there too. Creative partnerships are more than business. Nurturing the innovative spirit of young people is an important ingredient. Finding NGOs that aren't afraid to roll up their sleeves and step out the traditional box. I think if we've learned anything in this COVID crisis as individuals, it's to be quite flexible. Each of us have adapted individually and our day-to-day to how we work, how we all learn, how we do our jobs better. I think this is a time when we can think sideways in our jobs, know we have limited resources, but know we are not short of goodwill and good ideas. And if each of us could do something quite unusual with a new partnership, I think we might find something new coming out of this difficult time.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and that's very inspirational, and I feel like I want to jump out of this event now and do some other partnership work with you, because we opened with a video that was very tragic on the Moria refugee camp in the Greek islands. And as we come close to the event, we are speaking to a partner that mobilized, well, the Dear Word, the Dutch Postcard Lottery, UNICEF, UNHCR and Education Cannot Wait, and local NGOs that actually came together to do something about it. It's not to say that we have done enough, but there are forces, partnerships out there that are trying to make a change, and we need to support them. And Sarah, you represent that. Thank you so very much for that. Dose of inspiration and also reality. We are moving on to another partner now, as you said, and that is, next partner is actually John Goodwin, Chief Executive Officer of the Lego Foundation, which is another of these great partnerships that are just emerging and have become absolutely instrumental and crucial to Education Cannot Wait and work we do, and to the plight and the cause to ensure that we also focus on early childhood development, which I know is your cause as well in Their Word. And I will let you speak to that, John, but without you, we would not have been able to progress, and we still have a long way to go. But it's a great, inspiring partnership. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Yasmin, and thanks to everybody at Education Cannot Wait for bringing this together in the great partnership that you just talked through to reimagine learning for children who are left furthest behind. As you mentioned, at the Lego Foundation, we're committed to supporting all children, including the most young and vulnerable who are affected by conflicts and crisis. And we want to do that with quality learning through play experiences, which are critical for their holistic development and to help them return to normalcy of just being a child. We have evidence from research conducted by the Center of the Developing Child at Harvard University that finds that learning through play supports resilience, which mitigates the impact of harmful stress in children. And it gives them the coping mechanisms that allow them to express emotions in non-threatening ways that encourages the children to respond to the challenges with creative problem solving. And the nurturing care framework, which many of us support and underscore, really highlights the importance of promoting early learning to develop that responsive caregiving. And we're delivering these high impact creative solutions in early childhood development, in crisis settings through partnerships. We're partnering to deliver programs on the ground. So for example, in our Play to Learn partnership, where we're working with Lego Foundation's Sesame Workshop, IRC, BRAC, and New York University to work together to deliver positive play-based early learning interventions in Bangladesh and also in the countries around Syria. But importantly, we're committed to really extracting the learnings that can then be shared across the whole of the ECW community, so that then we can reapply those insights into new emerging crises. We're also partnering as funders to find synergies. So as an example, we've got a new partnership with USAID, where we're enhancing the education sector's COVID-19 response. And also through our partnership with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Denmark, we're bringing our joint expertise together to really focus on the crisis settings that are most important to both organizations. This really fosters a collective commitment to the innovative pedagogical approaches that Jaime was referencing earlier, that really enhance child-centric interventions and enables us all to leverage our collective impact. So through these collective collaborations, we hope we can inspire similar public-private sector partnerships to drive more investment into ECW towards shared priorities. So come and join us at ECW in order to really build a future where no children can be left behind.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John. And I want to take this opportunity to quote somebody else that I find extremely inspirational. And Sarah spoke about hope. And that brings me then to quote the founder of the Lego Foundation, because you just see how everything links together. The Lego's founder, his name was Kirk Christensen, and it's my favorite quote. And he said, Lego was founded 80 years ago, and he said, and everyone was questioning him when he was bringing out his pieces of Lego, and they said, what are you gonna do with that? You can't go very far with that. And he just kept believing, I'm gonna change the world with his Lego. I'm gonna do it with his pieces. And he said to them, don't you have any faith? Can't you see if we do this right, we can sell these bricks as bricks all over the world? This is 80 years ago. Well, that's what's happening, but more so through the partnership, through the hope that previous speakers and Sarah spoke of, but also the partnerships that John is speaking about. Not only that, today Lego is reaching those left furthest behind. That was unimaginable 100 years ago. Reaching those that most needed pedagogy and the psychological and early childhood development that Lego actually provides. And it's an incredible honor to work with you, John, and the whole Lego group. Thank you so very, very much. Thank you. Now we move on to another great partner, and that is Tariq, His Excellency Dr. Tariq Al-Gurg, Chief Executive Officer of Dubai Cares, who was also, there were so many founders of ECW, and that shows what a movement it actually is and was and continues to be. But Tariq really was there from the beginning. He has been there throughout together with his great team, and never hesitates to come in, support, find solutions, and he works across the board with all partners in Education Cannot Wait. And it is not an event without you, Tariq. We need you, and we look forward to hearing from you. And also the great plans that you have with Expo. That's a very great form of partnership. I'm handing over to you. Alan Wasala.
Thank you, Yasmin. And you know, there's not much to say when you're last or before last, but let's see how this goes. Talking about partnerships, let me give you a small story. So back in 2007, when His Highness incepted Dubai Cares, we championed 3 goals of the MDGs. So that's 2007. 2, 3, which is education, girls empowerment and women empowerment. 8, which is partnerships. And we took that seriously. And without partnerships, we would not have reached 10% where we are today, globally, in terms of reach, in terms of impact, in terms of innovating new programs, as well as having research built into all of this. Now, so that's 2007. Fast forward to 2012, what happens? Gordon gets appointed as UN Special Envoy for Global Education, and he chaired back then the UN Secretary General's 5-year initiative, Education First initiative. What's the first thing he did? He brought all the partners. He brought all the education partners. He brought government. He brought NGOs. He brought philanthropies. He brought global mechanisms, put them together under one roof and said, let's talk, let's solve the problem. So that was when? 2012. And then you remember what happened in 2016. Education Cannot Wait got incepted. And that was during the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul. Why? Because there was a gap. There was a big vacuum. No one was doing quality education in emergencies. And that's where we saw it. We actually championed education in emergencies I'll rephrase, quality education in emergencies back in 2015, actually. It was with the IRC and New York University. And we made sure that emergencies should have quality into it, not the normal coloring and reading books in those camps and tents. No, there has to be a proper quality into it, which is mainstream education. Now, Education Cannot Wait gets established. You were there. I immediately jumped in and I told Gordon, listen, it's not going to work without a secretariat. The secretariat's not going to work without funding. So we came in immediately, we funded the secretariat. The next cycle, we refunded the secretariat again. What happened? Cyclone Idai, we funded it. We co-funded the Indonesia earthquake. We funded Rohingya together with ECW and so on and so forth. So we believe in partnerships, and what you guys bring, what we bring together at Education Cannot Wait is coordination on the ground. That's what Education Cannot Wait brings. Coordination on the ground. Many said UNHCR, Save the Children, UNICEF, government, host country, the World Bank. Who puts all of this together? It is Education Cannot Wait. And to spice it up a bit, Education Cannot Wait is always the first entity which brings finance on the table as well. So let's not forget about that. So moving towards emergencies and what COVID-19, our bad sister COVID-19, Corona, did to humanity, we went into a large-scale disruption. Education Cannot Wait today, if it's going to do anything related to COVID-19, the whole world is into an emergency. And without the proper guidance, without the proper coordination, partnerships, it's not going to work. We, for 20 years, we've been talking about EdTech. We did nothing. And Corona came over one night, the whole world switched to remote learning. Why? Why couldn't we do it? It's never too late. We can do it. Education Cannot Wait is playing a role. UNESCO's Global Coalition for COVID-19 Response is doing a role. UNICEF's Giga Project, connecting every school with the internet, is doing a role. We're playing a role with all of you guys, and we will remain to do so. And I'll just wrap it up with Rewired. And that's why we did Rewired, Yasmin. We did Rewired to bring all the players in, to look into new models. How can we change education? We want to rewire education. That's why we called it Rewired. And now Rewired, from a summit, it has changed into a global platform. So one, we have the summit next year in December 2021 at Expo 2020 in partnership with Expo and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the UAE. So that will be the largest education summit. We have end of this year, December, which is the virtual session of Rewired, which is called Rewired X. So now we're putting all the provocations together leading up to the virtual summit. Next week, at the exact same platform that Sarah Brown spoke about, we're going to launch Rewired Talks, a platform for anyone, whether you're on the street, whether you're in the education sector, whether you're not in the education sector, to speak about an open debate about education, whether you are a cook in a restaurant, whether you work in a pantry cleaning. Just gather friends, families, at dinner, anywhere, talk, upload your information, and let's see how we can reshape the dialogue, how we can reshape education. And that's what we're trying to do with everyone. And I encourage everyone, as a founding member of Education Cannot Wait. Education Cannot Wait is doing the best job in the world when it comes to education and emergencies.
You are, yeah, Bibi, shukran. Thank you so much, my dear friend, my brother. Thank you. That was really a powerful intervention, a very kind one. And I think credit goes to many of those who created Education Cannot Wait, including the chair of the high-level steering group, Gordon Brown, and yourself, and everyone who is with us. And I just want to repeat, Expo 2021 in Dubai, it will happen. Let's hope Corona goes away, COVID-19, so we can all be there. And I also want to stress, unlock big change, their word, Global Business Coalition on Monday. Everyone should have received an invitation, because that is our partnerships whether it's ECW or all our partners in ECW, we're all kept alive through our own mechanisms and how we operate around that. So please, we are in this, all of us together. Thank you so much. So please join Monday, join 2021, join all other events. Now I will, and thanks for that great passion. I get lots of nice messages from my team here at Tarek. They're saying, wow, he's so passionate, he's so great. So really, thank you very much. Thank you for that energy and the contribution. Now we have a dear, great colleague who has been so involved in education, cannot wait, both in our executive committee, in our high-level steering group, who spend many hours also to connect to the private sector, thinking creatively, wanting to move things. And that is, and has never lost an opportunity to support Education Cannot Wait through USAID's investments in Burkina Faso, in country, seeing where the needs are, and always with a very strong emphasis on quality. They have great people in her team who can ensure that whatever is delivered with quality and with speed. And that's why my pleasure to name this great colleague and partner of ours, Julie Cram, USAID Deputy Assistant Administrator. Now finally, but not leastly and not last, thank you, the floor is yours. Please, Julie.
Thank you, Yasmin, and Tariq, thank you for teeing up me the last. So I will try to be the quick cleanup crew, if you will, on what I have learned today. That is, commitment and leadership matters through our financial resources and through our leadership as countries and as donors and as the private sector and as NGOs, adaptation and innovation, hope and inspiration, and most importantly, but not least, partnership among donor governments, with our country partners, with the private sector, and creatively seeking new opportunities always to deliver on our promise to the children of the future. What an inspiring morning we've shared, and I am so excited to be here among so many champions of education. As Carol, my colleague from the State Department noted, with her words and through the US government's additional contribution, education continues to be a high priority for the US government. As the lead US agency for international education, USAID remains committed to ensuring all children and youth, especially the most marginalized, have access to a quality, thank you, Yasmin, to recognizing our commitment to that, safe education. Today, that objective is now more challenging than ever. We know returning to learning requires more than just reopening schools. Children and families need additional support. We must accelerate learning to help students get back on track. We must help build resilient, flexible education systems to offer multimodal approaches that are inclusive and will reach all learners. We must incorporate social and emotional learning, as John noted, as the US and our partnership with LEGO is doing, and we must integrate that learning through play to improve both learning outcomes and student well-being. Yet we know we cannot do this all alone. At USAID, we believe, and so does at ECW, we collectively believe in building partnerships with the private sector to strengthen and sustain positive development impact where we work in support of our country partners. We share these, as we've noted, we share these with ECW, and since its inception just 3 years ago, ECW has made remarkable achievements in providing quality, inclusive education in crisis and conflict settings. We do not know what the future holds, but we do know that education, as we have known it, will be forever changed. That presents opportunities and challenges and responsibilities to the children of today and the leaders of tomorrow to envision and contribute to a world where school does not have to be disrupted by future shocks and stressors. Resilient education systems ensure that children can continue to learn, develop, and grow even more during times of adversity. Together today, and today's events really encapsulates this, we must use this opportunity to create a brighter future. Thank you to Gordon, to Yasmin, and to all of my ECW colleagues.
Thank you to you, Julie, and thanks also to all our USAID colleagues. Thank you very much for that. Look forward again also to see you very, very soon again. Thank you so much for your patience to be the last speaker. Thank you. I have to wrap up. We have gone over time, but I need to say 2 or 3 things before we take off, and I then leave everyone to go. First of all, I want to once more thank all our host governments who offered and came forward and volunteered to host this event. Colombia, the United Kingdom, Germany, Norway, the United States and Canada, together with Somalia, Ethiopia and Burkina Faso. I want to thank the youth advocates. I want to thank all the great ministers who are constantly there finding ways of providing support and financial investments to Education Cannot Wait. And to all the participants and the audience who listened on Twitter, on YouTube and so forth to be part of that. I want to thank Germany, the United States and Netherlands and Norway for making yet another pledge to show your commitment and support and keeping Education Cannot Wait going. I also want to let you know, for the first time ever, we have done donations where one can contribute while the event is going. And in 2 hours, we made $14,000 in 2 hours. It's not bad considering that some reasonable education for a child in a conflict is about $300, a reasonably good one, or $400. So I think we still managed to do some little part of the big pot there. And I also want to thank you for your everyone's from UN agencies, civil society, and again, governments and private sector for your insights, your innovations, your creative minds, your wisdoms, and your humanity. And I want to do 2 things, because I like to quote great minds. And we all agree that investing in education means investing in humanity. That's what it means. We invest in the human being, socially, emotionally, in all possible ways, to make that person unleash their potentials and also to be a productive citizen of their country and of the world at large. And there I wanted to quote the great American education reformist, Horace Mann. So I think he said something that sticks with me all the time. He said, "Be ashamed to die until you have won a victory for humanity." And I think that's very powerful for us all. We are here, we all agree with each other. We want to invest in humanity, and that's why we are together. But this is something we need to tell the rest of the world. Because if we want to gain a victory for humanity, it starts with education in those left furthest behind. So I wanted to raise that one. I find it very powerful. And finally, I also want to mention, to conclude this, and this is again something that we jointly have to tell the rest of the world. We are already convinced, but crisis always leads to opportunities. It's not that it can lead to an opportunity. It always leads to opportunities. The COVID-19 will lead to an opportunity. Even a war has an opportunity. How horrible and how much it should never have been there in the first place. And we have to take those opportunities, and we have to take those opportunities to make sure it never happens again. We can do it either by saying, well, there's nothing I can do, or we can say, I'll do a little bit, or we can say, we're gonna give it all. And that's what we do at Education Cannot Wait. That's what we have done here today. Governments, strategic donor partners, private sector, civil society, we are doing it with all the force and power that we have. And because of that, there is a great chance that we can make the future of education here and now to be present much sooner, and rather sooner than later. We can change the world. Yes, we can. Thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful to be here today. And thank you for all the great contributions, support, for being who you are. And we are going to go there, and we're going to do something for humanity together. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for being with us. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Ana Sumaya Ehonar Badi Samarkul Kevot Yara Bidishan Atu Padma Mara Tu Muravari or Uso Muravari Udah bayang malah terlihat dollar agung dan kali. তারপর কর্ণপতি বাগুতা তুলে খেলা এর শিখে দেয় যেহেতু আরো সুন্দর করে পারি তারা তো বেশি খুশি লাগে দেশের মানে কি দেশে শান্তি করে পারেন সাজ জান মানে কি শিক্ষা করি আর মাস্টার ওই তো সারি আর গরি জিন মনে হয় নেতা যায়